Coming up on Arirang News, the United States says it's staying vigilant in regard to the threats coming from North Korea and is working closely with its ally South Korea to ensure they're both ready to respond to any situation. South Korea reports 49 new cases of COVID-19, 17 of which were in people coming from abroad. Most of the cases are in the Seoul area, but there are some cluster infections in other cities. And U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says China has renewed its commitment to following through on the two sides' Phase 1 trade deal. He met this week with a top Chinese official in Hawaii. It's 5 p.m. here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us on Arirang News. I'm Devin Whiting. The United States has reiterated that North Korea continues to pose a serious threat and that round-the-clock vigilance is essential. Washington's also coordinating with Seoul to ensure readiness against further threats. Kim Yo-sun reports.
A senior Pentagon official has stressed that North Korea's latest hostile activities show the regime poses a, quote, extraordinary threat to the Asia-Pacific region. Speaking to reporters via teleconference on Thursday, David Helvey, the acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Indo-Pacific Security Affairs, explained that this calls for Washington to continue to stay vigilant. He also underscored that the U.S. is in close coordination with South Korea to ensure readiness against further threats from the North. He added that many issues, including the resumption of large-scale joint military drills between Washington and Seoul, as well as bringing strategic assets to the Korean peninsula, are currently being discussed with South Korea. Helvey added that it's difficult to tell what the regime could do in the coming days or weeks. He added it's crucial to remain vigilant against all types of threats and provocations. The official also stressed that the goal of achieving the final, fully verified denuclearization in the North is not only that of the U.S., but one shared by countries in the Asia-Pacific region and beyond. Regarding the issue of North Korea, Reuters reports Thursday that David Stilwell, Assistant Secretary of State for East Asian and Pacific Affairs, expressed a willingness to seek ways to cooperate with China. Despite the fact that Beijing has not been helpful in its latest actions, he made it clear that this is an issue on which cooperation with Beijing is essential. Such remarks come amid signs that the North Korean military is moving to the front lines near the south. Several South Korean military sources said Thursday that North Korean troops were spotted at civil police guard posts in the DMZ that had been left empty as a result of an inter-Korean military agreement signed in September 2018. The North state-run media also warned on the same day that the demolition of the Inter-Korean Liaison Office was just the beginning of its provocations toward the South, adding the regime's next moves could, quote, go far beyond imagination. As of now, however, South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff says no unusual activity has been detected and stressed that Seoul is closely monitoring the situation, continuing its full readiness posture. Kim Yo-sun, Arirang News.
In making its latest threats and provocations, North Korea has been demanding that South Korea stop people from sending propaganda leaflets over the border. Action is being taken to stop them, and in some cases there will be legal penalties. But some of these groups are determined to keep sending the leaflets and the rice they've been sending for years. Kim Jae-hee reports.
Empty plastic water bottles being filled with rice and a face mask. Recent tensions between the two Koreas are not enough to stop this North Korean defector-led group trying to help people north of the border. The group plans to send 500 bottles to North Korea by floating them into the sea near the border on Sunday. It'll mark the 108th time they've sent rice to the north since they first began in 2016. The group, reiterating it's a humanitarian act, say they don't understand why they're suddenly deemed controversial when they've been sending goods to the north for 5 years now.
We're sending rice and masks so North Koreans won't starve. How is this provoking them?
This other group plans to send around 1 million anti-Pyongyang propaganda leaflets across the border to mark the 70th anniversary of the Korean War that started on June 25, 1950. They've already sent 500,000 leaflets denouncing North Korean leader Kim Jong-un and the regime's human rights abuses, attaching them to hot air balloons in May. They say they won't stop what they've been doing for over 15 years just because residents near the border are urging them not to provoke North Korea. But they say if Pyongyang apologizes for blowing up the liaison office and promise to rebuild it, they'll take a step back.
We're talking facts and truth in a peaceful way. Just restore it and apologize. Then we'll leave you alone and not send the leaflets for a while.
The South Korean government is stepping up efforts to prevent anti-Pyongyang leaflet campaigns. But with the defectors determined to push ahead, their actions are not only becoming a source of tension between the two Koreas, but also causing internal conflict in the South. Kim Jae-hee, Arirang News.
South Korea reported 49 new cases of COVID-19 on Friday. 26 of those were local transmissions in Seoul and Gyeonggi-do province, and 6 were in Daejeon. Cluster infections outside of Seoul, like the one in Daejeon, are causing concern among officials who say in some cases the route of the infection remains unknown. There were also 17 imported cases. Of those, at least 6 Bangladeshi nationals and 1 South Korean national tested positive after taking the same flight from Bangladesh. Total cases now stand at 12,306. There were no new deaths, leaving the death toll at 280. U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said in a tweet Thursday that China's top foreign policy official has promised to honor all of the commitments China made in the two sides' Phase 1 trade deal. Pompeo was referring to his meeting the day before in Hawaii with China's top envoy Yang Jiechi. In Beijing, China's foreign ministry said the meeting was constructive and that Yang laid out Beijing's position on Hong Kong, Taiwan, and Xinjiang province. This was the first major face-to-face diplomatic encounter between the two sides since the start of the COVID-19 pandemic. South Korea's Finance Minister Hong Nam-gi says starting next month, the government will provide some $4 billion in loans to subcontractors in key industrial sectors like chemicals and steel. Hong says he expects the measure to be of practical help to the subcontractors who are having a hard time getting bank loans due to their low credit ratings. He also said the government will push for a $1.6 billion in additional financial support for subcontractors in the automobile sector. South Korea's top duty-free retailers are going to start selling their products in ordinary stores from next week with no need for a plane ticket. The government's letting them do that temporarily to help them out since their airport business has all but dried up. Lotte Duty-Free will have products in local department stores and discount malls from next Friday. Shilla Duty-Free will start selling its goods online and its platform Shilla Trip from the middle of next week. There'll be discounts of 30 to 50% off the usual non-duty-free price. Time now for an in-depth look at the market news on this Friday, and for that I'm joined on the line by Mr. Daniel Yu, Global Strategist at Yuanta Securities. Mr. Yu, thank you for making time today.
Thank you for having me today.
Well, U.S. stocks were mixed overnight. The Dow and the S&P not moving much either way. The Nasdaq, though, up about 1/3%. There's uncertainty out there about the possibility of a second wave of the coronavirus. What's the story in the global markets?
Yes, as you said, markets were kind of volatile. Only the Nasdaq showed a slight rise by about 0.33%. The several states have reported new outbreaks after reopening of their economies. That caused some concerns, but President Donald Trump asserted that the U.S. would not set another round of restriction to curb the spread. So because of that, market seems to be kind of flat. On the data front, the initial job loss claims rose by about 1.5 million compared to the market expectation about 1.3 million. So which kind of put some fears in regards to the slower than expected recovery of economies. However, though, today, if you look at the futures market, the S&P and Nasdaq are all up more than 0.5%. Because that there's continuation of talk happening between U.S. and China, that China is planning to accelerate the purchase of the American farmers' good to comply with the first phase of trade deal. So all in all, market seems to be fairly reasonably okay, and that has resulted into most of the other Asian countries and European countries, particularly the Asian countries, showing rise today.
Well, you could say it's been relatively volatile on the Korean markets as well lately. The Kospi dropped sharply after opening this morning, but managed to recover all of that and some more. The Kosdaq had a gain today, too. Tell us about the local markets.
Yes, as you said, the Korean market closed with Kospi rising by about 0.37%. Kosdaq is up about 0.64%. I think that is because of the Chinese led good news the People's Bank of China have decided to cut the rates. That has resulted into additional liquidity conditions and positive move by the Chinese equity market. If you look at the Chinese equity market, it was up for Shenzhen index more than 1.5%. Shanghai was up close to 1%. All in all, additional liquidity conditions, additional boosting measures done by the government, and also some better news in regards to the trade deal between U.S. and China, all is putting some relief measures to the concern about economic recovery being slower than expected. That has resulted into South Korea recovering nicely. Maybe going into the future, the stabilities in regards to the global economy due to the boosting measures, that should have positive implications for Korean equity market going forward.
Well, now we've seen the Korean won gain some against the U.S. dollar the past couple of weeks, coming down to around the 1,200 level, even though there is some preference for safe havens right now, like the dollar. What's your outlook for the Korean currency?
Yes. If you look at the South Korea's won, it touched a 12.19 level because of the concern about the North Korea and South Korea issues. The Kim Yo-jong, the sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, said the country would redeploy the troops to the demilitarized zones, affecting some negativities in terms of the North and South relationship. And that has resulted into the won depreciating quite sharply. But after that, in the last 2 days, it seems to be fairly stabilizing. As of today, it's down to about 12.09 won to the dollar rate. Going into the future, we think that the Korean won should be a range bound, anywhere between 1,200 to 1,250 range, because given the fact that the Korea's economic growth rate is relatively better than most of other countries, and the Korea's government debt to GDP ratio is very low relative to any other countries, and Korea continues to have the current account surpluses, all resulting into Korean won stronger than most of the other currencies. As you can see, the U.S. dollar index is somewhat depreciating, but not fast speed, but moderate speed. So that should have the same implication to the Korean won appreciating gradually. So probably on the bottom side, it'll be around 1,200 level. On the upside, maybe as high as 1,220. Before, it was anywhere between 1,220 to 1,250, so it's kind of leveled down to the appreciation for the Korean won.
Got it. All right, Mr. Yu, thank you for sharing your insights today. Have a great weekend.
You too. Thank you.
Now, a scenic spot in the Korean capital, Seoul Forest, turned 15 years old this week. To celebrate, the city is giving a virtual tour of the forest online, taking visitors to some of the forest's hidden spots and showing them how to spend quality time there safely. Jang Tae-hyun reports.
Picturesque canopies of trees and with a calm lake. This is where people can breathe in fresh air in the middle of the city. Once a horse racing track, Seoul Forest is now a park the same size as 70 football fields and attracts around 7 million visitors per year. To mark 15 years since it first opened to the public, Seoul Forest put together an online tour to show off some of its hidden spots. The tour made viewers feel like they were actually walking around the park and show them that they can even see deer if they come and visit in person.
In this state of disaster, socially vulnerable groups are another concern. They also need green spaces like parks for them to enjoy.
Students, work friends, and families come to the park to hang out. And many foreigners also visit to enjoy nature and see other places nearby. Visitors to Seoul Forest must follow basic virus prevention guidelines like wearing a face mask and keeping their distance from others. The facilities are disinfected and areas which draw large groups of people have been closed temporarily. Rather than being cooped up at home, many people are getting out and visiting local beauty spots to relieve stress. Jang Tae-hyun, Arirang News.
The K-pop boy band BTS has made history again, topping the Oricon chart in Japan. Oricon announced Friday that the latest BTS album, Map of the Soul 7, topped its sales rankings for the first half of 2020. The album sold almost 430,000 copies in Japan alone. This is the first time in 36 years a non-Japanese artist has been #1 in the first half of the year. The last one was Michael Jackson with his album Thriller. And that brings us to the end of this newscast. Thank you for watching. More live news coming your way at 7 p.m. Korea time.